Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good conversation in your breakout room. And if you are able to keep your video on, if you've got strong enough bandwidth, that would be great. And so just so that we all know, my name is Louise van Rhyn. I'm the founder of the Partner for Possibility program and also Owner Leadership Development. And today, the conversation is hosted by some leadership development. And as an organization, we are committed to find better, more creative ways to develop leadership consciousness, leadership capacity, because we know that that's what the world needs more of. And so today our conversation is going to be it's an opportunity to reflect on our own experience of facilitating and being involved in a program that we've been working for the last 10 years. So those of you who are brand new to this conversation, we have learned that we need to spend a bit of time to just make sure that we're on the same page rather than dive straight into the conversation. So welcome to all of the newcomers to this conversation. For the people who've been part of our conversations many times in the past, we're also delighted that you are with us. And the way we're going to get ourselves on the same page as efficiently and quickly as we can is to just show a 5-minute video about the Partner for Possibility Leadership Development Program, just so that you all know how it works, because then we want to go straight into the detail and we're going to hear from people who participated in the program, and we're going to just be in a conversation around this new way of doing leadership development, not having people sit in classrooms, but actually living a life of immersion and immersing themselves into a completely different world outside of their comfort zone. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you this one video about Partners for Possibility as a leadership development program.
Extraordinary leaders not only have the ability to build a real sense of community among colleagues, teams, and departments, but the power to create hope and change throughout our country. They empower, inspire, and uplift individuals in their own organizations, as well as in under-resourced schools where leadership skills are so desperately needed. These are the leaders that can bring South Africans together to initiate a ripple effect of positive change. These are the kind of leaders our country needs.
Research shows that leaders learn more about leadership from being immersed in a challenging environment where there are no easy answers than from going to business school. Partners for Possibility is an award-winning field immersion experience for leadership development. Business leaders and school principals from under-resourced communities are partnered in a co-action and co-learning partnership to achieve maximum leadership for both parties. This multifaceted year-long program is carefully structured to incorporate 16 aspects of leadership development that build leadership capacity in different ways. The innovative 70-20-10 model, incorporating action learning, social learning, and formal training, is designed to enable long-term sustainable change through resilient, socially conscious leadership. The experience is structured to deliver future-proof leaders who know how to apply key leadership skills in the real world.
By being outside the office, you learn a lot more about your own self-leadership and general leadership than you'd ever learn from a business school.
Partners for Possibility has taught me to become a positive deviant and get rid of the negative norm.
I learned that the most creative and innovative solutions come when you really listen to people.
I've learned that people come up with their own solutions when you really listen to them with full attention.
Being outside of my own context and connecting with people that I wouldn't normally do gave me a deep sense of appreciation and understanding for the work that we still need to do in this country.
The Partners for Possibility program is strengthening the fabric of South African society by creating opportunities for people to work together across traditional boundaries. By spending time in communities outside their offices, business leaders develop a better understanding of the critical issues facing South Africa. The program is not only benefiting businesses. The development of socially conscious leaders has a significant impact within South African school communities too. Principals are empowered with skills, knowledge, and confidence to manage and lead their schools more efficiently, motivate their teachers, involve parents, and build networks of support to address the school's most pressing needs. Since the launch of the program, Partners for Possibility has strengthened leadership capacity in and around more than 1,000 schools across 9 provinces. This has enriched the lives of more than 23,000 teachers and more than 750,000 learners.
What also we learn from the Partners for Possibilities approach is that leadership is at the center of all developments in organizations and society. I note that the leadership approach targets the principal, but listening to the stories from the principals and the CEOs or the executives, it's very clear that the leadership approach is the leadership that plants seeds of leadership in everyone.
Leaders who see possibilities instead of problems, who radiate with transformative energy, creating ripples of hope and positive change in the office and beyond. To join the more than 340 organizations that are contributing to South Africa's well-being while developing the kind of leaders that our country dearly needs, email pfp@symphonia.net or visit pfp4sa.org.
I want to be a pilot. I want to be an engineer. A doctor. I want to be a robotic engineer.
So now we're all on the same page and you've all got a sense as to what we've been up to. So a little bit about the background and how we got to this point. When we conceptualized Partners Possibility as a leadership development program in 2010, none of us had, oh my goodness, I'm just gonna, okay, sorry, that's me now making this background noise. I was just thinking someone else was doing it. Me, so let me just stop this. Sorry about that, guys. So back to my story. When we thought about this idea that we want to develop this as a leadership development program, we had no idea that by 2020 more than 2,600 leaders would have experienced the program, and that the impact would have such a significant impact on people's lives. So we've all been surprised by what we've seen and experienced. So Partners Possibility is a program that takes business leaders outside of their comfort zone, out of the office where they have a formal job title, and into an under-resourced school to go and do real and meaningful work in partnership with a school principal, one of the most challenging leadership roles in the world. Now, many of you might know that there are other programs that have a similar theory of change. This idea that we learn most from being in complex and challenging organizations outside of our comfort zones. So Harvard has a program called FIELD, the Field Immersion Experience for Leadership Development, which was designed to open new MBA students up for learning in a way that being in a classroom was not going to do. We know that IBM has the Service Corps program, where employees get a chance to spend a few weeks helping not-for-profits in under-resourced countries to tackle complex problems. About 12 to 15 IBM people partner in a country with government, business, civic leaders to address high priority issues. And then we have SAP has the Social Sabbatical Program. So I heard about these programs in 2010 at a Women in Leadership breakfast at Gibbs, and one of the leaders of the Big Five consultancies shared with us how she had been to Costa Rica to work with the non-profit organizations to help address some significant issues. I was asking myself whether it wouldn't work for us to tap into these amazing resources, these business leaders, like that particular business leader from the top 5 consultancy, to address the issues we face in education. And my question was, instead of putting people on planes to Costa Rica, could we just get them in a car and go to the other side of the N1? Now, over the last 10 years, our work has been studied by many people in South Africa and in the rest of the world. And increasingly now, international professors at business schools are asking themselves whether this kind of program isn't a better way to develop leaders than the ones that they've used in the past. So many of you will know that we also have a conversation on Monday evening with Professor Gary Mandafico from the Pepperdine University and the Masters in the Science of Organizational Development at Pepperdine. And then we have Professor Julian Birkinshaw, who's the Professor of Strategy at London Business School, will be joining us on the 12th of October. So this is today is a start of this series of conversations to say, isn't it time for us to rethink at scale how we do leadership development, and also tap into the knowledge and skills that we've developed here in South Africa, for South Africa and for the world. So today we're very privileged to have 4 of these business leaders on the call with us today. They've all been on the program. Grant Kelly from Nedbank, who's able to attract a crowd. Ayesha Ismail from FEM. Kamala Pillay, who previously was at Sasol, but she loved the program so much that she joined the program as the new program director, and then Clive Naker from First Rand. So we're going to hear from them soon, and we're going to hear their stories in their own words. So when we talk about Partners Possibility, we talk about it as a multifaceted process. It's both it's a leadership development program, it's a process to improve education, and it is a nation building process. So today we're going to talk about Partners Possibility as a leadership development program. But I thought, just as another way of getting us kind of into this conversation, that it might be useful to just hear a provocation from Professor Brian Fugaji. So recently we had another book launch, one of our book launch conversations. We've just recently published a book, and Professor Fugaji was on the call, completely unplanned. We didn't know that he was going to be on the call. And he said something at the end of the conversation, at the end of the book launch, that really struck many of us. So I want to quickly share that with you. It's about 3 minutes. Bring Professor Fugaji's voice into the conversation, and then we're going to start to hear from these amazing business leaders. So 3 minutes, Professor Brian Fugaji.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, that was the wrong one. That was not the right one I want to show you. I want to show you Professor Fugaji, but that should be Professor Fugaji. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to show you that, so there must be a reason. We will send you the link to Professor Fugaji's talk later, and therefore go straight into our panelists. So these panelists have all been part of PFP. They've all given out feedback that they think they're better leaders as a result of having been part of the PFP program. But we want to hear their stories in their own words. And each of us, certainly the members of our team, are going to be listening very carefully to how they describe it. So the first person who's going to speak is Grant Kelly. He's executive head at Nedbank, and his story is captured in chapter 14 of the new book. So Grant, we want to hear from you. What did you get from being part of the program? And what are your thoughts now in terms of leadership development, given that you have had many leadership development experiences over your life? We are looking forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Louise. So you dummied me there. You said I had 5 minutes more to prepare, and then suddenly, poof, the 5 minutes was gone. So now I'm up. I mean, just listening to the video and reflecting on the PFP program, I learn every time, and hearing your story about sending people to Costa Rica, and I mean, it is nice, but it's also somewhat amusing when you think you've got South African leadership development. I'm not sure we need to send people to Costa Rica to learn about leadership development in a social context. I think the challenges that we face in the South African environment are adequate to tax our leaders. And just listening and reflecting on the structure of the program, it is an incredibly well-structured and considered program, and it's a container. And I suppose I committed to do the program in 2014, and then I was given an excuse or an out because of structural changes in the bank, and I took that excuse, and it took me a couple of years to recommit to the journey. And I suppose there was a process of fear of would I be adequate, would I be able to contribute, and you know, I can give sound advice to anyone who is nervous about committing to the program. It is an incredibly powerful, well-structured, well-considered program, and the benefits are beyond imagination. If I reflect on my personal journey, I suppose there is an operational learning that I got through the program, and then there's something that is much deeper than that at a subconscious level in terms of my own personal growth. And that continues, and I think the PFP journey has accelerated my interest and my focus on that. From an operational level, the program focuses on how to lead without formal mandate or without rank. So as a business leader, you come into the process and there's no control or hierarchy or rank. You're leading through influence, and I think that's quite important. The power of listening and the power of hearing the other is amplified throughout the journey. And when you listen to people who have been through the program, that is a consistent theme that everyone touches on, is you really learn to listen and hear the other. And I suppose for me, it's part of seeing the world through multiple perspectives and taking multiple perspectives. The power of collaboration lands strongly, and I think it's a follow-on from that. The importance of stakeholder buy-in. And when you look at the education system in South Africa, there are many, many levels of stakeholders. And so the education system in South Africa is indeed a system where interdependencies and interconnections are so important. And understanding the complexities of the relationship within that system was very important, and clearly, I think, again, is one of the themes that emerges through the various people who go through this. I suppose from my perspective, and I'm going to talk specifically from a white male from privilege, I think this program should be mandatory as part of leadership development. And the reason I say that is leadership is about service. And I was reflecting on my slide presentation at the end of my journey, and I highlighted the difference between management and leadership in one of my slides. And there is so much executive management development that takes place where you learn about technical skills and business case studies and this and that. And certainly I'm seeing that the world is emerging where business with purpose is increasingly a call from society. There's a shift away from business for profit and shareholder primacy to stakeholder outcomes. And so PFP exemplifies the servant leadership mindset and approach that I think is going to be socially relevant for businesses that are leading or remaining socially relevant in a 21st century. Because without social impact and without the mandate of the society for your products and your solutions, businesses will become increasingly less relevant. And so I think that PFP offers an amazing opportunity for people from privilege to reflect on their consciousness, their purpose, their meaning. I certainly had an opportunity to reflect on my relative privilege. Going into a classroom with 63, 65 children was not my education experience. And I look at that and I say, operating in a society like South Africa, which has the highest income inequality in the world, where legalized racism and prejudice was only changed 25 years ago, how do we, as senior executives, let's call us executives, not necessarily all of us are leaders, but as senior executives, justify and accept that. And I suppose I've gone through a personal process of reflecting on the paradigm of white supremacy, which was explicitly called out by the United Nations Secretary General in his Nelson Mandela lecture this year. And when I start talking about white supremacy, a lot of people immediately jump to skinheads and neo-Nazis. And white supremacy is way more dangerous than skinheads and neo-Nazis. We live in a society with the highest income inequality as measured by Gini coefficient in the world, and yet we continue to maintain the status quo and operate in a business as usual framework. And certainly my experience of the PFP journey was it challenged me to reflect on how do we tolerate this and why is this acceptable? What's the paradigm that makes this okay to us? That we can go to an inner city school in Pretoria between Clicks and the Wimpy, go up a flight of stairs, and there you have 400 kids squashed into classrooms. That is certainly fundamentally different to a Model C school or my personal education experience. And I look at the talent in that community, the teachers, the kids, the committed parents, and we're not unlocking the talent in our country. And for me, those experiential learnings in a tangible way put me on this committed road to reflect on the roots of white supremacy within society, and particularly South Africa. The institutionalized systemic racism goes deep. My personal view is it's no longer good enough to acknowledge that and just say, I'm not participating in that. My view is, unless I pick up a shovel, I'm part of the problem. Unless I am digging out those roots, I'm part of the problem. And that for me was my learning and outcome from what was an incredibly rewarding and wonderful experience, amplifying the comments that other people made. I met a community of people I otherwise would never have had the opportunity to meet. Amazing humans, and I loved the commonness of our humanity, but it also challenged me in my paradigm and my status quo. And it said, Grant, are you going to continue to maintain the status quo and manage the status quo, or are you going to lead for a transformation in the status quo? And I suppose that's where I find myself now. And I've certainly used the PFP learnings of pushing that agenda within my organization in a way that is not driven through rank, mandate, and authority. It's driven through influence. And I suppose it's driven through my belief and commitment for justice and equality within our society and our economic order. And so that's where I'm at. I don't know if there are any questions, comments, observations. I'll end there. I think I've used up my time, Louise. You're on mute, Louise, so you're gonna have to unmute.
We're not gonna let you off the hook too quickly here, because we have given ourselves a little bit of time, and I now have the link for Professor Fugaji, so we'll hear from him in a minute. But just a few, I want to put you on the spot just a little bit. On this call, we have many people who have a responsibility to procure leadership development. And currently, it's a bit like, you know, when I was in IT many years ago, there was a saying that says, you will never be fired for buying IBM. It's like the safe option. And there are some safe options right now. And you know, I'm at the risk of so I'm not going to mention them, but we know there are some safe options. Some of them are in London, some of them are in Boston, some of them are in Paris or in France. Some of them are in Johannesburg. Some of them are flying people to South Africa to come and teach us about leadership. But I've been on a call with you before where you said that you think, given where we are as a country, and for you personally, that this was a more powerful leadership development experience for you than any of those safe options. And, you know, let's not mention them, but just, you know, because you're part of Nedbank. Nedbank's one of the organizations who really invest in their leaders. So you spent a lot of time in classrooms learning about leadership. Why is this different? Why would you recommend that people are willing to take the risk to think of a different way of doing leadership development?
Yeah, so I'm happy to name them. It's on my LinkedIn profile. So I did a Duke AMP in America, and I did a INSEAD strategic management in banking program in Fontainebleau. I mean, wonderful experiences, expensive, but wonderful experiences. And I don't regret those experiences. They certainly weren't life-changing. And PFP, the PFP journey has been life-changing, but it's accelerated the journey. I mean, you know, you don't get to a point, you're on a journey, and it's accelerated that journey for me. And I suppose I find that there's a lot of focus on management and case studies that are not socially relevant to society. I don't know if someone's, I'm singing a song or
We've muted that, that's fine.
So for me, you know, my experiences on those courses were, they were interesting, and I learned about operational management processes and how to manage more efficiently and those type of things. What they weren't was social consciousness and awareness creation, development opportunities. And I think that true leadership is about an act of service, and it's about doing service with courage and humility. And so I think there's a call for leaders to look at our society and really understand that we live in a perverse society where the levels of inequality are extreme at a global benchmark. And coincidentally, we had legalized racism up until 26 years ago. And so there is, I mean, it could just be coincidence that that's the case, or it could be that there are structural and systemic issues that are perpetuated in our current environment that reflect the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. And so for leaders to actually immerse themselves with the architecture of those previous systems of under-resourced schools, I think it creates a perspective, an awareness, and a consciousness that is relevant to the South African environment. My final point on that is I'm currently involved in a leadership development executive thing at the bank on agility. And great, you know, really cool slides and you know, big consultancies and all those things. And I said to them, so is agility about a way of behaving, or is agility about a way of thinking? Because if we don't challenge the way we think, no matter how agile we behave, we're not going to change the structure of this society. And the problem is the structure of this society has got ingrained in it systemic prejudice, oppression, and exploitation. Those were intentionally ingrained under apartheid and colonialism, and now they're less formalized, but they continue. And I suppose for me, if we don't challenge the paradigms in which we see the world and our worldview, we're not going to change the worldview. And leveraging off Danella Meadows' systems thinking, the most effective way of transforming a system is understanding the paradigms or mindsets on which it's built. And I always use the American example because it's less close to home and it's less sensitive, of police brutality and racism in America. And so people can identify that in the American case. But when you get to the South African case, it gets sensitive because of white fragility. And it's a book that one of my black colleagues from the bank got me onto. And it should be part of mandatory reading for leaders, particularly people from privilege. And I know what I'm saying is sensitive to people. The point is, it's also sensitive if you look at our socioeconomic data. And like, it's just not just, it's not equitable. I don't believe it's sustainable, but even if it was sustainable, it's not ethical. And so leadership has to be context specific. And I think that South Africa has a unique context, and the PFP program taps into that context and creates consciousness that is immeasurable compared to the value I got from those other cool, fun, funky programs. But, you know, it was good.
Nice to go to Fontainebleau.
I got to go to Fontainebleau.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's a beautiful place. Thank you, Grant. We will create another opportunity to hear from Grant. I just want to, at this point, ask everybody to just take a minute and to say, and to ask yourself, what struck you about what you've just heard from Grant? And if you are willing to just capture that in the chat, it will do two things. One is it will help you to really get the most out of this conversation. And secondly, it will inspire Grant to know that that was the impact that he had on you. Well, and thirdly, it will be some new insights for all of us. So if we can just take a minute and just share your thoughts on what you've just heard from Grant. And then I'm going to show you the video from Professor Brian Fugaji. But firstly, just a few opportunities for people to just capture their thoughts. And thank you very much, everybody. And please keep sharing those. I want to quickly show you the video that I wanted to share earlier and had a bit of a wobble with. This is Professor Brian Fugaji. He's read the book, and this is his reflections on reading the book. Professor Fugaji, before we end, could we hear just maybe one word from you, and then I'm going to give Brant Pretorius the final last word for the day.
Okay. Thank you, Louise. I was not going to say anything, but let me do. And I'm fast. Thank you for the invitation, first of all, and I'm very impressed with the people on the call and people who have taken time to join the call. The recognized role that PFP plays is normally the educational role, and we all see that, and we see the results, and we see the schools. And my comment to you was around the less recognized role, and that is the bridging of our society and the healing of the wounds of apartheid. And so you have Black Lives Matter, you now have the sports people fighting about it with each other. And that's all because we don't have a mechanism for people to understand the effects of the historic past. And you only understand that when you actually see it. And what PFP does is it gives white people an opportunity to see the disadvantage and then start realizing what the consequences are. When I listened to Brant this morning, that speak can only come from somebody who has lived, seen, lived, realized, and now understands exactly what the impact of our history is. And sport was supposed to heal our wounds. Well, they haven't really. And I think what we must realize with PFP is we have a vehicle that actually helps people in society to learn to understand, without fanfare, learn to understand each other, learn to understand the historic past, see what that is, and in their way, provide reparation. That's what it is doing. And it's a vehicle that we must use more readily, more widely, not only to improve education, but to build society and to repair the South African society. And it gives us all an opportunity to talk to each other with empathy and understanding. And I think for me, that's the role. That's the important part that PFP is coming to play. So thanks and good luck to all of you.
So, thank you, Grant. Again, you are one of our most amazing ambassadors for the program, and we are very, very lucky to have you in our, now we go again. Here's my, sorry guys. Sorry. Okay, I need to learn how to not let that happen. So the next person we're going to hear from, and there's lots of appreciation for you in the chat, Grant. I hope you're going to get a chance to read that, and we will come back to giving you another opportunity to speak later. The next person we're going to hear from is Aisha Ismail, who is the Chief HR or Chief, let me just get my titles correct, Chief Human Resource Officer at FEM. Aisha has been part of the program as well. Her organization has been strongly supporting our program. I have to just acknowledge that. They have made it possible for many principals to experience the benefit and the value of partners' possibility. But Aisha, today we want to hear about your experience as an HR professional who's been on this program. I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Louise. Thanks so much for inviting me to share my experience and my PFP story. Can everybody hear me? Let me just check if, yeah, you can hear me. Okay, so
maybe speak a little bit louder, Aisha, but we can hear you.
Okay. All right. My journey started in November 2018 and ended in November 2019. And I must say, what a year it's been. It went really, really fast. And at the beginning, I was a little bit apprehensive, thinking how I'm going to juggle you know, being on the PFP program with my normal day-to-day work responsibilities. And there was a lot of sort of apprehension about whether I'm going to be able to do it. But I think for me, I thought that I needed to do something like this for my own experience. I went in with an open mind and just said that, you know, I'm going to just juggle it. I'm going to give it a try and give it my best go. So I was partnered with a principal in a school in Soweto, in Mapetla, called Diodi. And my first visit to the school was a bit of a shock, because Diodi is definitely not an affluent school. Infrastructure is so old, classrooms were so overcrowded, furniture and equipment old, but you know, when I walked around and when I was introduced to the teachers and the children, I got a sense that there was so much love in the school, that the teachers were doing their jobs, the children were happy to be at school, and that's how my journey started. So going from, you know, where I was shocked at what I saw. Basically, two kids sitting on a broken chair, trying to keep the chair together, and for me that was really heartbreaking. You know, I thought, sure, I wasn't exposed to this, and it really opened my eyes to the social ills that plague our society and the unequal education system. But I think for me, the aspect of the program that really excited me the most was that it was so practical. So there were components that were theoretical, like time to think and the flawless consulting. But within that theory, there was so much opportunity to practice. And that really, really excited me, to just immerse yourself in that practical component of the program. So it allowed me and gave me the opportunity to interact in situations which I would ordinarily never been exposed to. You know, the opportunity to work in deprived and disadvantaged communities helped me discover my own humanity. And it sort of opened my eyes to the unequal education system in our country. So my perceptions changed very quickly. You know, I had the opportunity to meet and collaborate with the school leadership and the learners at the school. And what struck me was the appreciation I had, because the teachers so warmly welcomed me into their world, and they shared their stories with me. My mind opened to new possibilities when I started engaging and listening with intent. You know, I had the sense that they wouldn't be open to sharing, and it was completely different. I sat in all the teaching classes, and I just got a sense that, you know, they were so committed to what they were doing. You do have you know, your problematic teachers, but they are you know, far and few. So most of the teachers were really committed to what they were doing, and you know, when when you come from a place of privilege, you have the sense that things are not working because people are just not committed. And it's not working because they're not, you know, they don't want it to work. But when you immerse yourself into that actual environment, you have a different perception of what actually happens. So there were a few issues that needed to be dealt with, and having an HR background, I was able to sort of give my perspective on things when my principal was experiencing problems with tardiness and, you know, time and attendance and things like that, which we quickly rectified. Yeah, so I had to go in with an open mind, and I said to myself that I needed to learn as much from this program as my principal. You know, we were equal partners in this. And I think Time to Think and Flawless Consulting helped us to step out of that comfort zone and to learn completely different things. So I was very inquisitive, wanting to know so much about the school. I would go there and just bombard my partner with questions about things that I wanted to know about. And it was difficult at first because, you know, I was inquisitive. He wasn't quite sure whether he could share everything with me. And I think that whole year for us was about building that relationship of trust that eventually built into a relationship of friendship, where he was so comfortable in the end talking about personal issues. And then I just realized that, you know, principals are bombarded daily with challenges and all sorts of difficulties, that they don't get an opportunity to talk about things that really, really bother them. And Time to Think really helped us with that. So I was very privileged that he could share so much with me. You know, so Time to Think really did help just to be a good listener in some situations where I wasn't really doing anything, but just listening, and gave my partner the opportunity to vent some of his thoughts and his concerns. And I think for me that really is what built that friendship and that trust relationship. And it, like I said, it wasn't easy to do that. It was difficult at first because, you know, I was coming from a different environment. I came from a business environment. And I think that my partner thought that, you know, I was coming to sort of just check what's going wrong in the school. And you know, he soon realized that wasn't the case. And every time I went to the school, I was very warmly welcomed. Even, you know, the fact that the teachers welcomed me to sit in on their classes meant so much for me, because when I speak to principals, that's not something that easily happens in a school. In fact, some principals are not allowed to sit in on in the classes that teachers are giving. They're just not allowed to do that. So I did feel privileged to be able to do that. And for me, the Time to Think taught me to listen at a deeper level, where it felt almost like the other person is really hearing you, you know. The components of paying attention, of being equal partners, of practicing appreciation, providing encouragement, talking about your feelings, and really giving attention to each other. There were many times in the program where we, as partners, felt that we weren't moving fast enough compared to other partners within the circle. But in retrospect, you know, when I look back, I believe that it was important for us to go slow in the beginning so that we could close out successfully on some of the important focus areas that were identified. So you know, I was very pleased that when we got to the end of that year, we closed out on everything that was identified as a focus area that the principal wanted to fix. And it wasn't big things. It was little things that needed to be fixed, issues of tardiness, time and attendance, you know, those types of issues that he really, really wanted to fix but didn't know how to. And it was the discussions that we had that really helped us get to that stage. So I think if you ever feel like you're going too slow, I think that's okay. Because for me, it really helped us close out on a lot of the important things that were identified. And, you know, coming in as a business leader, I often had the impulse to impose solutions. And I had to constantly check myself and hold back. Because it wasn't my problem. You know, I sort of went in thinking that, oh, it's easy to fix this. But I wanted my partner to feel like he had thought of the solution. And in our thinking partnership, that did happen. You know, our discussions were very meaningful. It engendered positivity, confidence in decision making, and then also just implementing those small steps towards achieving the goals that needed to be achieved in that period that we were partners. I think community building for me was so important because there were things that happened at the school. There were sessions, like one example was a session that the Teddy Bear Clinic ran on Know Your Child. And we extended that to the broader community outside the school. And we had just so much, I mean, it was just so well attended. People from outside the school, the broader community attending. And there were many other examples like that that I can share, but time just doesn't permit, you know, to do that. But we found that this approach of sharing in abundance really, really benefited the school and the broader community in so many ways. So that really, really was something that worked well for us. If I look at how the PFP program changed me as a leader, firstly, I think the practical, the theoretical things that I learned and the practical things on Time to Think and Flawless Consulting helped me to rethink my own leadership. So I had to take a step back. I had to think of doing things differently to the way I was doing it, sort of reinventing myself. I had to give more of myself and demonstrate how I show up so that, you know, my team members can too improve the way that they show up. And now we deal with matters very differently. So we have real-time discussions about what's not working, how we can resolve issues, and it works for us. So it allows for real-time engagement, and that really works for building a cohesive team. So for me also, I'm very mindful of my body language, and that I learned over the year that you know, I have found that it's important not it's important to be mindful of that and to be aware of it all the time. I found that it's important not to prescribe actions or solutions, but rather to allow the discussions to yield the most desirable outcome. That for me worked both in my own work environment as well as with my partner. So you know, it's that whole appreciation as well that I've learned, and I've practiced it in my own work environment, in my own team, is to appreciate each team member for what they bring to the team. You know, I've learned to be less judgmental and more trusting and concerning. My management style has evolved to focus more on coaching, which really helps. You know, if you want people to thrive and you want people to be their best, then you have to be trusting. And to build the trust, you have to be clear about your expectations. So flawless consulting comes in there. You know, so be clear about what you want so that people can succeed and prosper. And what I learned is that skepticism can be overcome if you lead from a place of trust. The trust relationship is so important for communication, for collaboration, and for execution. And, you know, I've seen that happen this year, especially leading from a place of trust, because we were faced with unprecedented times due to COVID-19, you know, so we almost had to shift focus on how we do things. And that building that trust relationship for me was really, really important to help me with the whole virtual environment and the work from home environment. So the formal things like Time to Think, Flawless Consulting were very hands-on for me. And this, coupled with the circle discussion, the interaction with the business leaders and the principal, allows for that hands-on perspective of the program, where you are in a circle and you are sharing ideas, and you may not even think about or have thought about something that someone else comes up with, and that for me was a great experience. So over the last 5 months that we've been working from home, we've had to adjust very quickly to changes and to very stressful situations. And I think I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to be part of the program last year, and to put my learnings into practice and into test this year, because I've really seen that come out, especially in the last 6 months, with working from home and having to shift gears so quickly.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Everything you're saying speaks to my heart. So we've always said that we think Partners Possibility is about preparing leaders for the volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. And if there's ever been a volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous time, this is it. So thanks, Aisha. Hopefully we'll hear from you again before the end of the time. I just want to say that if anybody wants to share any thoughts or reflections in what you've heard from Aisha, please share that as an act of generosity. I was on a call with Otto Sharma, who's one of the people who's inspired me recently, and he said the leadership competencies for the new world that we're going into, this new normal, is curiosity, compassion, and courage. And I think that's exactly what we've heard from Aisha, is that's what she's strengthened and discovered through being part of PFP, and that's just wonderful to hear. So please, guys, if you could share your thoughts in response to what Aisha said, that would be amazing. We're going to move on. I'm also keeping a very close eye on time. So we're now going to hand over to Kamala Pillay. So Kamala's story is that she was a manager at Sasol when she was part of PFP, and now she's a member of our team. She's leading the team. So Kamala, over to you. What have you gained from PFP? How did it happen that you are now part of this program, having done this as a Sasol leader?
Thanks, Louise. So yes, I'm a relatively new member of the Symphonia team. So Louise is actually my boss at the moment, so I have to be very careful about what I say. No, but I'm actually going to speak as a Sasol leader, and I was in Sasol 6 months ago, actually 5 months ago. So I'm just going to reflect on my experience while I was with Sasol. So I worked at Sasol for 18 years. I'm a chemical engineer by training, and I've been very fortunate. I had a fantastic experience at Sasol. First as an engineer doing technical work, and thereafter on the business side, I had the opportunity to work in a number of different operating and strategic functions, and I really was able in my time there to hone my skills as a general manager. So this is Kamala, the Sasol general manager, speaking rather than Kamala, the PFP program director. So I came across PFP, it was probably about 2.5 years ago, when I was looking for a way to give back, and specifically for a way in which I could give back meaningfully within education. I've always done some volunteer work in my life, and you know, the usual kind of thing where you either giving money or you're giving some of your time, you may be doing some sort of menial work. But what I was really looking for was an opportunity to share my knowledge and experience. So rather than maybe going and painting a classroom, I'm a terrible painter, I wanted to share some of my business experience. And seeing this PFP program described, this was absolutely exactly what I was looking for. So I joined the program. I was lucky I was able to convince the Sasol team to sponsor me. I joined the program in 2018. I was partnered with a principal from Soweto, Klipspreid West. Absolutely amazing principal, wonderful woman, Ilana Herodine. I can talk for hours about her, which I won't do today. So I did definitely get on my PFP journey. I got that opportunity to give back. I worked together with Ilana on a couple of projects we successfully completed. One of them was a literacy center. It was extremely satisfying, that opportunity to really give back to the school and to the children there. What I wasn't expecting, actually, what I never expected, what I didn't sign up for was my own personal development and my leadership development. And so that was actually quite a pleasant surprise. So Grant and Aisha have already explained quite a lot of those leadership development learnings, and it's quite interesting listening to them, because what I found with the program, it is structured, and it's built upon a very solid, well-recognized learning methodology, but it's not a cookie-cutter approach. And so everyone's experience on the program will be unique based on your own background and what you bring to the program. So the learnings then are slightly different for everyone, but listening to Aisha and Grant, it's quite clear that there's these few themes, these key themes that everyone on the program is going to be experienced too. I think the one that I specifically wanted to highlight was the concept of servant leadership. So for those of you in corporate, I'm sure very familiar with this term, servant leadership, and with many of these corporate buzzwords and phrases, it starts to lose meaning as we throw it around. So I'm going to try not to abuse it too much today. It was interesting when I started my PFP journey, the conversation within SASL was about unlocking human potential and how leaders could enable rather than stifle their teams. So for those of you coming from corporate, you will know immediately what I mean. Successful leaders rise through the ranks in organizations because they are the ones with the ideas. They've got the fresh thinking, and they've got the solutions to the problems. So when you are that sort of leader, and I would say all leaders as going through the ranks are that sort of leader, you have qualities that make it exceptionally difficult to unlock potential in others. So in an organization, a lot depends on a handful of people, which I think often works fine until it doesn't work fine. And so Steinhoff is a very clear example of this, where a lot was dependent upon one person in the organization. And there's many other examples that I won't go to that we know of where this is happening in business. So what the Partners for Possibility program does, it takes this bright talent and it doesn't put them behind the steering wheel, but it puts them in the back seat. So me going into the program, or any business leader from corporate going into the program, you're out of your comfort zone. You don't have the teaching background and skills and knowledge. You have to really listen, and truly listen to understand so that you can contribute. So listening and really strengthening those listening skills are paramount. And you cannot direct, you cannot tell the principal what to do. You have to build a relationship. You have to guide through influence and through advising. So this is what the PFP program forces leaders to do. And the other aspect of the program that I found quite remarkable is that, often with a leadership development intervention, you go in and maybe you're lucky like Grant and you go to spend a couple of weeks in INSEAD, but it's a finite time period. You go in there, you learn a few things, you go back into your work environment, you forget probably about 80% or 90% of what you've learned. But with the Partners for Possibility program, you have to practice these new skills over a full year. And you've got over that year support from a coach who will guide you, will also kind of remind you when you're not being true to the leadership development practices. And you've also got a community of other leaders who are on their own journey, but who will support you and will share, they will share their experiences with you. So this is what I found to be really very unique and powerful about the PFP program. I consider myself a good team leader. Before this program, I thought I was fairly good. My manager could always rely on me to get the job done. I think I'm a better leader now because I'm better able to tap into the talents within the team. I can still get the job done, but I believe, maybe I hope, that I'm at the same time empowering the people around me and helping create new leaders so that the reliance is not just on me as an individual, but that the entire team is working together. And I think the other important thing is that we are all imperfect humans. We do forget, we do revert back to our normal behaviors that have been ingrained over years. But what has really helped me with PFP is that I still have my relationship with Ilana, my principal partner. And by continuing that relationship, and I know she thinks that I'm doing it for her, but it's actually mainly for me. She reminds me every time we meet of the commitment I've made to become a better leader. I think I'm out of time, so I just want to quickly close. If I look at business is becoming more and more challenging. We're competing with companies from across the world. Within South Africa, the old giants of the past cannot afford to rest on their laurels. We've seen that companies trying to go abroad, not being successful. Business today needs leaders who are able to tap into the talents of everyone in the organization. For me, PFP is an extremely practical intervention that can help create these leaders who can tap into the talents of people around them and be more successful and make the organizations more successful. So yeah, thanks, Louise. I think I am out of time. I'm over time.
Thank you very much, Kamala. That was wonderful to listen to you. And I mean, exactly. So we specifically, when we looked at who can take the organization forward, we were looking for someone who have learned these lessons, because we want the organization to be consistent with our theory. And it's been wonderful to see Kamala practice exactly what we are preaching as she's joined our team. So thanks, Kamala. I'm going to go straight on to Clive just because of time, but really want to encourage anybody, if you've been touched or inspired by anything that Kamala said, if you could just share that in the chat as a way of just acknowledging her contribution, but also just for your own learning and a way to, to just kind of let this time that we spent together work for you. So the final participant or the final contributor is Clive Naker. Clive's story is also told in the book, chapter 14. I remember very clearly that day that we went to see Clive to do the interview for the book, and I was just so touched by his story. So I hope that you're going to have a similarly inspirational experience just listening to Clive about his experience. Over to you, Clive.
Thanks, Louise. Well, look, from what I've heard from my previous speakers, a lot has been said, and a lot of it I can relate to as well. And I was actually surprised to the amount of similarity the experience has happened over the number of different participants in the program. So, and maybe what I'll say, you'll find how it resonates with what has already been said as well, including Professor Brian. So just to continue with Elise's introduction, I'm from First Rand Bank and particularly focused on IT. And being in an IT department, your focus is also to deliver solutions. And naturally, you are looking to solve problems. And as Kamala has already said, when you are in the corporate environment, you're promoted and encouraged to solve problems, and you get to a point where you're very confident about solving the problems. You must have a good solution, and you sort of get yourself into a comfort zone. So you build this comfort zone around you that you are, the one army that's going to solve everybody's problems. So when PFP was introduced to me to join the program, firstly I thought, in my background, my experience, I've actually not done enough from a social contribution perspective. So I wanted to do something different. And I've told Louise this, that when I started, I said, I'm going to solve Dalton's problems, my principal, my partner. I'm going to go there. I have big plans. I'm going to solve all these problems, and everything's going to be sorted before the program even ends. But yeah, I was in a big surprise. I realized, I suppose, as everybody has already heard, I've learned more about not just the school. I've learned, and my partner, I've learned more about myself through that whole experience. And I owe a lot to my partner being so open and honest with me as I have been with him. And I think it's a lot of how you interact with in the program, with the people, with your partner, with your coach, and it's getting out of that comfort zone and being immersed in that environment of where the challenge is, and a different type of challenge than what you're usually accustomed to in your work environment. That's where you begin to experience who you really are. What are your boundaries? How do you push those boundaries? How do you actually react to certain situations? And you can feel yourself sort of changing as well along this journey. And it's not just about the principal of the school, it's actually about you and being in that environment. You get to experience it, and this is the key part of PFP for me. It's that experience. You have to have that experience in order to grow. Now, part of the learnings that I also picked up, and there's a number of them, and I've just written a few down. It's firstly, when you're on the program, you also need to let go. You can't bring all of your baggage and all of your prejudices and all of your paradigms of thinking with you. Just let everything go and just go with the motions of the program. Try not to relate what you're learning back to the office all the time. Let go of all your previous thinking and be immersed in the environment. And I think as you flow through it, you'll find that these things can be made practical. You don't have to enforce it all the time in the working environment, but you'll find that it comes through naturally. And I found that as well. The one thing, as Kamala has also mentioned, having that coach along the way, that person who you can always reflect with and have that time to think. And Dina was a fantastic coach. And the one thing which I always remember, and I keep doing it on a daily basis with my team, is have they arrived? Have I arrived? Anytime we go into a meeting, instead of just starting the meeting off and going through the agenda items point by point, first thing I check is, has everybody actually arrived in the meeting? So you're in the room, but you're actually not there. And this is so relevant right now with these video conferencing meetings, because people are, not necessarily on video conference, but they're on their laptops, they're on their phones, they're actually having conversations with other people while being on mute. So they haven't even arrived of being committed in that meeting. Now, I suppose the other thing which has been touched on in these discussions is the ability to lead without having the direct authority. And being part of this large group in first rank group, and in a center where I thought I was a good leader. So I thought I was actually, I'm leading by influence. I'm doing all the right things. I'm getting recognized. But until you're actually taken out of that comfort zone and you separated from the ranks, you separated from the corporate structures, and you find yourself in an environment where you're not the person who needs to with the challenges. Somebody else is with the challenges, and you don't necessarily have to have all the solutions to those challenges. And I found myself, as I'm working with Dalton, he actually has all the ideas. He just needed to speak about it. And the PFP program opened up that barrier. It really created that channel for Dalton to really talk about what he wants to do. What are these challenges? They are infrastructure challenges, but I tell you, Dalton managed to solve all his infrastructure challenges on his own. I went there day one. He says he needs to put up these curtains. I thought, okay, I can help you with that. But by the time the end of the year was over, Dalton did more than just put up curtains. He had a new kitchen installed, and there were new classrooms installed. And I was surprised. I was so amazed that he managed to do all of these things. But he turned around and said, the reason why he could do these things is because I was there to encourage him. I was there just to listen. And that for me was very, very humbling. And there's so many situations like this throughout the whole program, not just for Dalton, but visiting every school, where you are humbled by the amount of passion and commitment that teachers and principals have. And that is really life-changing. And as Louise has also said, being immersed in this environment bridges this gap that we've got in our society between the people who are privileged and the people who are not, and it makes us understand and appreciate everybody's background. Yep. So Louise, I know that this was very, very short from my side, but I really just wanted to say those words. So thank you.
It's such a toss-up. On the one hand, Clive, we can have an hour and a half with you and with Grant and with Aisha and with Kamala, and yet we know that we only have little time. Everybody's so busy. So thank you very much for your contribution. Everybody, if you were touched or inspired by anything that Clive said, please could you share that. What I want to do now, as I did promise our panelists that they're each going to get a final word, and we've got 5 minutes left. So in the next 3 or 4 minutes, I'd like to hear from people on the call who have not been part of Partners Possibility before. Maybe someone who's kind of new to this conversation, maybe one of these people from Nedbank who's been inspired to join because of Grant. Just anybody want to share your thoughts or reflections in response to what you've heard from these 4 people, specifically from a leadership development perspective, because this is what we are doing. We are reimagining how leadership development works. Instead of having people in classrooms, we want to send people into the world to go and do really important work, because we need all the hands on deck. So just want to check whether anybody's willing to just say something about what you've heard today. And Anthony, I know that I'm going to put you on the spot because you and I've been communicating. What do you want to you're an OD guy. What did you hear, and what are you inspired by? What are your thoughts now after having heard these 4 people?
Good morning, everyone. Nice to make contact with all of you. Just me, like Tom says, it's just, sometimes, something just speaks to you, something grabs your attention, and you said, what can I do to make that difference? And if you can make a difference in one person's life, it's sort of a ripple effect. And I think, this program creates an environment for people to touch the lives of people in the most simplest of ways, just to be there, just to be a sounding board, somebody that they can talk to, just reading the PFP book as well, and just getting more engaged, just seeing the impact is not just having on the business partner, not just having an impact on the principal, but the teachers and the children as well. I've just got such amazing memories of school, and that it just felt like a place where you could be safe, protected. Many schools don't have that. But through PFP, through the partnerships, we're creating those safe space for the children. And at the end of the day, it's all about impacting their lives and the lives of the community. And that just keeps coming back to mind for me. So this is what I get out of these interactions. So thank you to everyone, and just your amazing stories. It just blesses me. It just reaches me, deeply. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony. For speaking up. So Anthony just recently bought a copy of the book, and that's always such an endorsement when someone does that. Anybody else? Any other member of our wider community who joined today maybe for the first time and was touched or inspired by something that you heard? No? Okay, so what we'll do is we will hand back to the panelists for a final thought, and we'll do it in the same order that they spoke before. So first person up is Grant.
Thanks, Louise. So I suppose if I can just comment on a reflection of what Clive said about Dalton having all of the answers, that was certainly my experience. Freddie absolutely had all the answers. Freddie was an amazing human being, my partner, his leadership team, the teachers at the school. They were such amazing, wonderful, capable humans. And my experience echoed yours, and it's just such a powerful thing is, as you, Clive, as you said, Dalton said, the reason that he was able to achieve these things is because you were there to encourage him through the journey. And the same thing for me with Freddie. And it's just such a humbling, but I suppose it's a profound takeout for me of this entire journey, is if we are just there to provide support, encouragement to each other, the stuff that can be achieved, and we can change the outcomes of our society through that. And I suppose that for me is what this is all about. And yeah, my journey continues because PFP has, I suppose, it's created a renewed energy in me to accelerate my personal growth journey, and I suppose look at how we create a more just and equitable society in South Africa. And it was wonderful to hear the words of Brian Fugaji. I mean, those were just incredibly powerful. Louise, you need to share that. I didn't have the chance to listen to it before the session today, so it was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Aisha.
Thanks, Louise. So I think a final word from me is that, judgments and preconceived ideas definitely shut down learning. So for anybody wanting to go into a program with PFP, be open-minded, be inquisitive to learn as much as you can, and be willing to reinvent yourself. What I learned is that skepticism can be overcome if you lead from a place of trust, that relationships are so important for communication, for collaboration, and for execution. And I certainly learned that it takes a long time to build that relationship, but I have built a wonderful relationship with my partner that's actually transformed into a very good friendship now. And even though my PFP journey has ended, my partnership still continues. And I believe that the change starts with our leaders, and that in years to come, we'll see the fruits of our efforts through our learners. Thanks, Louise.
Thank you very much, Aisha. Kamala.
I think just being short and sweet, join the program. The experience is incredible. You will be amazed.
Or even tell other people in your organization about the program so that they can get involved, because we've got lots of leadership development practitioners in the call. Thanks, Kamala. And then last, Clive, thoughts from you. So you are now muted, Clive.
There we go. All right, sorry about that. So I think my last comments is we naturally fear the unknown, and I think PFP gives you the opportunity to actually to get comfortable with the unknown and make reality your friend as well. We're not necessarily always in a comfortable place, and getting to a point of having the strength and courage to face the unknown is what PFP provides you, and that is more than just leadership skills. I think that's really being a capable, strong human being, and a better person at that. And that's what I think PFP provides you.
Thank you very much, everybody. We are at the end of